going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImmacSports.
Instagram is also at ImmacSports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 247, 1 week closer to the All-Star break, the halfway point. So we got a lot of baseball to talk about, from power rankings to more. Some trade deadline talk today, Kyle.
Yeah, we're going to get into buyers or sellers. This is something that we do usually around this time of the year, just like kind of what I said last week about the All-Star voting that we did. But for this, we like to get ahead of the curve as well, too, before any of the moves really start happening. So it's really a true prediction and not, looking into some other stuff. We've already started to see some rumors of some buyers and sellers, maybe with the Red Sox looking to trade Jarren Duran. We'll probably talk about that potential move at some point during this episode for sure. But yeah, we got that. We got a NBA Finals preview in the second half as well, too. And I guess we could get right into it. And I'll let you go first with yours because I'm just singing the same song as the past.
Yeah, if you're like me and your favorite major league team has won one time over the past month, a great alternative this weekend was college baseball. This has been a really fun tournament to watch, with 7 of the top 16 seeds already being eliminated in the first round. Number 1 Vandy lost to Wright State. That was a great couple of games. In the first game, Wright State had them no hit until like the 7th, and they blew it, but they got them again and eliminated. Similar story, number 2 Texas takes down Texas San Antonio at home. That's the first time in 10 years the 1 and the 2 have lost in the first round. Also, maybe the best series all weekend was LSU squeaking past Arkansas Little Rock in their Game 7, because that LSU pitching staff is just way too deep to lose early. So anyways, we have 2 very big super regionals coming up this week to look forward to in the South. That's Auburn hosting Coastal Carolina, and Arkansas hosting their rival Tennessee. Some other great games, but those are the 4 teams I'll be watching closely.
My opener is going to be something that I've talked about multiple times now, but now he gets a little bit of recognition for it. It's Jacob Wilson winning AL Rookie of the Month for the month of May. Hit 368, OBP at 437, so he wasn't just getting hits, he was walking as well too. 39 hits, 16 RBIs, and 4 homers. Seems pretty obvious now that Jacob Wilson is the runaway candidate for AL Rookie of the Year, with not just his, going crazy over the past couple of months, or really this entire season, but also Christian Campbell kind of falling off here recently. I've seen some like Carlos Narvaez stuff from the Red Sox fans. They don't know what they're talking about. If we got one thing, it's Jacob Wilson and a couple other hitters as well too. Even if it's not turning into wins, he's still fun to watch day in, day out. That brings us to our player, pitcher, and rookie of the week, as we always do. Getting started with the player of the week, Skyler, who did you choose here?
Yeah, I've had my eye on Junior Caminero for this one for a while, because he terrorized the Astros this weekend for 7 hits and 11 RBIs in their series. He ended up with 4 total homers this week and led the OPS charts, so I gave him the nod.
Yeah, I also went Junior Caminero. He also had 13 RBIs over this total week as well, too, which is by far the most out of any player in the MLB. OPS just under 1,600, so pretty crazy week for Junior Caminero, who's I want to call it a slow start that he's had this year, just not really, off and running start that we might have expected from him going into 2025, but seems to be picking things up now. As that whole Tampa Bay Ray lineup has been over the past 2 weeks. Moving over to our pitcher of the week, Skyler, who did you choose here?
My pitcher of the week will not be Bowden Francis. He just gave up 3 runs in the top of the first to the Phillies. Framber Valdez, though, impressed me probably the most out of anyone this weekend. Although Zach Littell had a pretty interesting complete game, I'm sticking with Framber. He threw a complete game with 9 Ks, just 1 homer, giving up that 1 run. And he finished the game with under 90 pitches. So Houston definitely gets swept without him and Hunter Brown. They're right back in the playoff race with a 7-3 stretch. Offense looks horrible, but they got Framber. It's pitcher of the week.
Yeah, the 2 complete games we had this past week were very different. I think Littell had like 116, 117 pitches and a complete blowout of a game. Framber Valdez goes the full 9 innings, only gives up 1 run, 9 strikeouts with 83 pitches. That's like an MLB The Show thing. I don't remember last time we've seen a pitcher have under 85 pitches in a complete game. I saw something saying that he didn't even really have an inning over like 13, 14 pitches or whatever. So, I mean, I can only imagine how frustrating that would have been as Kevin Cash going against him in that game where you're just watching your hitters not build innings over and over and over and over and over again, and then eventually lose that game. But that was pretty much the only bad game that the Tampa Bay Ray offense had this past week. So, Framber Valdez shutting down that lineup gets my pitcher of the week. And what about Rookie of the Week, Skyler? Maybe somebody already mentioned?
Yeah, definitely going to go with the Rookie of the Month again, Jacob Wilson. And it was a really rough couple of weeks outside of the big three in the A's lineup, like your tweet today. But Wilson, once again, leads all rookies with 10 hits, improving that batting average somehow, and even tacks on another deep fly.
Yeah, 10 for 24 for the soon-to-be AL Rookie of the Year in 2025. 2 doubles, a homer in Houston, 4 RBIs, a stolen base as well, 2 in Toronto, and an OPS over 1,000 for me and Skyler's favorite shortstop. I think you could say that pretty definitively now.
Sure.
Moving into our power rankings, which we do bi-weekly, as we've said multiple times now. I don't really have any team that I want to talk about that's off my list. Do you have anybody that you want to mention before we get into number 15?
Knocked off the list this week will be Kansas City for the first time and Atlanta once again.
All righty, let's get into number 15. Who'd you choose with your last spot?
At the last spot, I'm going to give the Toronto Blue Jays the nod. I was blanking on their name for some reason. I wanted to say the Raptors, but I think beating up on the A's definitely boosts them temporarily, but they are in a unique situation with Vlad Jr. already paid. A couple of question marks that we'll get into in the second half of this show, but they could definitely buy if they want to.
Yeah, Toronto is going to be my number 15 team as well too. They go 9-4 over this 13-game stretch, and big sweep over the A's this past weekend as well too, which kind of inflated some of that, win totals perhaps. Number 14.
At 14, the Houston Astros are staying pat here at the same spot as 2 weeks ago. A couple games over 500. Really great top of the rotation there. We mentioned the two guys, Framber Valdez, Hunter Brown. It's just the offense. So another team possibly just a few bats away. We'll see how it shakes out. They're still a top half team, though.
Number 14 for me is going to be where I slot the Giants. And despite having a 1.82 ERA over the past 2 weeks, they went 5-7. Pretty much the exact opposite of the A's. Their offense can't do anything, and they're pitching about as well as he possibly can. So I moved down 5 spots. Maybe a bit harsh, but if you can't score runs, you can't win games. And we're seeing that right now with the Giants. Number 13.
At 13, one of the surprises this season, St. Louis Cardinals will stay at the same spot I had them. Kind of a trend for me this week. They have done not the 13th in a row of the past, but just enough, over 500, right? They're exceeding expectations. Another team that we'll get to later here. Are they going to sell? Are they going to buy? They haven't really done much over the past 3 years, but they're winning ball games. So I got them at 13.
Number 13 for me is going to be where I slot the Milwaukee Brewers. First time on the list in a couple of weeks here. Best team in baseball over the last 2 weeks, going 10-3. Pitching's good, defense good. Christian Yelich starting to heat up as well too. So they get the number 13 spot for me. Number 12.
At 12, I got the Cleveland Guardians dropping down 1 spot from last time. I thought they played pretty well against the Dodgers, so I didn't go too harsh on them here. They just got to beat the Tigers, man. That's the thing.
Yeah, number 12 for me is going to be where I slot the Houston Astros, like we talked about a little bit earlier. They go 7-5 over 12 games during this stretch. They move up from an unranked team to my number 12 slot. Number 11.
At number 11, it's the Minnesota Twins, another team that's not quite as on fire as they were before, but still hanging around 500. They're about 6 games over right now, and not a big test coming forward with the A's, of course. They got the Blue Jays and the Rangers coming up, too. I think they're right about the middle of the American League.
Number 11 is going to be where I slot the Cleveland Guardians, 7-4 over the stretch. Like you said, played some tough teams like the Tigers, the Dodgers. Now again, the series started versus the Yankees, and they fared okay. So I move them up 4 spots to the number 11 spot. Number 10.
At 10 is where I got the unranked Milwaukee Brewers, right? 8 wins in a row. And the big shocker this season is they're actually scoring a lot of runs right now. It'll be interesting to see if they could do this against some of their rivals. I know they have the Padres coming up too this week. That'll be a big test, but I thought they deserved the nod over some of the AL Central teams.
Number 10 for me is going to be where I slot the Cardinals, 6-5 over this stretch. Not the greatest pitching, not the greatest hitting, but it's getting the job done. They're in a good spot right now, so they move up one spot for me. Number 9.
At number 9, I'm not moving San Francisco. Same in that range of teams that are within 30 to 40 wins. And they have kind of a better track record than some of these other teams. So I didn't knock them for the bad lineup. It's one of those situations where they're going to have to buy.
Number 9 is going to be where I slot the Minnesota Twins. They move up one spot for me despite going 5-6. Starting to get a bit healthier on the offensive side with Royce Lewis coming back these past couple of weeks and Matt Wallner coming back from injury as well too. I like them because of their starting rotation. Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, 2 guys that the A's will see back-to-back nights. Both studs. Those are guys that you want at the top of your rotation. Bailey Ober, another guy as well too. And they got a lot of pitching depth, which is always helpful. Number 8.
Yeah, talk about pitching. My number 8 team is going to be the Seattle Mariners. They do drop a little bit from 6, but they have George Kirby back. Hasn't quite gone deep into any games yet or gotten a whole lot of outs, but it's a start, right? Cole Young comes up. It's a walk-off. It's more about the energy of the Seattle team. And, of course, Cal Raleigh is an MVP candidate. That's just unbelievable for them. They're a top 10 team.
Number 8 is going to be where I slot the San Diego Padres. They do move down 3 spots despite going over 500 in this stretch, but that dominant pitching that we saw earlier in the season just isn't quite there right now. 4.18 ERA isn't bad, but not the Padres ERA that we were used to when they were not giving up, 3-4 runs a game at all in the first month and a half of the season. Number 7.
I hate to have to do this, but I'm dropping the Phillies from the 1 spot. If you remember last time, I was experimenting with that, and they just did not have a great stretch here. They gave up a ton of runs to the Brewers. They got swept by them, and didn't look great against Atlanta either, who's not even on our list. So Philly's going to get a -6.
Number 7 is going to be where I slot the Seattle Mariners. They don't move at all from the rankings 2 weeks ago. Maybe the pitching isn't as good as what it's been in previous years. Jorge Polanco has now slowed down after his eventual hot start. But like you said, Cole Young came up. Julio Rodriguez is starting to finally get going. And Cal Raleigh is having the best catcher season that we've seen since 2012 Buster Posey. So Seattle Mariners, number 7. Number 6.
At 6, I got the San Diego Padres. I kept them in kind of the upper echelon of major league teams here, moving them up 1 spot actually, because I just really like their matchup against the Giants. I have them above them. If they sweep them here too this week, that will help my case out a lot. The thing about San Diego is they're not at full strength. I think they're going to get even better, so I'm not going to drop them because of that, I guess.
Number number 6 is where I have the Phillies over their past 12, 7-5. I know the Rush series this past week against the Brewers was definitely, something I saw as well too. But I'm not going to be as harsh on them, I don't think. I move them up 2 spots from where I had at number 8. But the pitching has not been as good as what you might expect for a very strong Phillies staff. Number 5.
At 5, I got the Chicago Cubs moving up from 8. I'm sure it'll be a popular pick to bring them back into the top 5 because their lineup is just so much better than some of these other teams we just talked about, San Diego and the Giants. Even Seiya Suzuki has been a really fun one to watch this year because he's been just as good as Kyle Tucker.
Yeah, number 5 is also where I have the Cubs. They go 9-2 over this stretch. The biggest thing for them, not just their hitting, but their pitching's been good as well too, holding a team ERA just over 3 during that time period. So if they can pitch, we are looking at a potential World Series contender with the Cubs. Number 4.
At 4, I got the Yankees staying put at the same spot. They've taken care of business. Outside of the Dodgers, they've won every other series. And over the last 30 games, 30 days or so, they've been great. They just need one more starter. Even Ryan Yarbrough looks pretty good.
Yeah. Number 4 is also where I have the Yankees. They moved down 1 spot for me. Like you said, pretty much good against everyone except for the Dodgers over this past weekend. Luckily for them, they did get that Sunday night baseball game to kind of make things look a bit better. Aaron Judge is being Aaron Judge, but the rest of the lineups maybe slowing down a little bit. Regardless, they're still playing good ball, and they stick at number 4. Or they don't stick at number 4. They only move down one spot to number 4 for me. On to the top 3.
I'm going to keep the Tigers at the 3 spot again because they're staying atop of the AL with 40 wins, the first team there. They swept the Giants, and they won a tough series in Kansas City. There's just a couple more teams I want to talk about that I think we would both pick them over Detroit if they matched up in the World Series.
Number 3 is going to be where I have the Mets. They do move up one spot for me. 9-3 over this past stretch. 2.65 team ERA. Juan Soto finally starting to get going as well too. Paul Blackburn came back from injury last night. His first start, he looked good against the Dodgers. Kind of the same thing that we've talked about this whole year with the Mets. The pitching staff's been a lot better than what we expected it to be. Number 2.
At 2, I gave that to the Mets, moving up from 5 because they're one of the few teams that match up well with everybody, including the top 2, who I assume is your top 2, I'll say. I don't want to give anything away. So they get a big bump over Philly. Their 38 wins is the best in the NL, and they've been unstoppable at Citi Field. Tough place to play again.
My number 2 is going to be where I slot the Detroit Tigers, same spot that they were 2 weeks ago. I can't put them over the Dodgers yet, and I don't think I will, regardless of how things go in the season. 2.38 ERA, though, for the Tigers. They got the best pitcher on the planet right now in Tariq Skubal. They go 9-4 over this stretch. As consistent as the team has been this entire year in winning is the Detroit Tigers. Number 1.
I got the Dodgers back up to first, where they belong. I know I experimented with Philly a couple weeks ago, but they're just not at the same level as the Dodgers. And they might not have the best record in baseball, but that series win against the Yankees is a big tone setter. That pitching staff has been very good despite all the injuries. So it's hard to go elsewhere.
Yeah, number 1 is going to be the Dodgers. Like you said, maybe not the most pretty stretch over the past couple of weeks, only going 7-5, but they're the Dodgers. It doesn't matter what they look like right now, as long as they win their division, which they'll probably do, and are healthy by October. I know they just put Glasnow on the 60-day IL, but he should be back hopefully by the playoffs. Blake Snell maybe as well too. And if you got those guys, it's really all you need, because the other guy that they got starting for them in Yamamoto is pretty ridiculous. Now moving into buyer or seller, we got a whole bunch of teams that we're going to talk about. Starting off with 4 different teams in the AL East. Do you think the Toronto Blue Jays are a buyer or a seller?
Toronto showed that they like to stand pat most of the time, so I don't expect a Bo Bichette trade or anything like that, but I could definitely see them trying to move some expiring contracts, like I hint at later on, Bassett, Chad Green, something like that. But similar with Vlad, I think in their mind, they believe they can get the deal done, so they won't trade Bo.
Yeah, I'm going to say slight buy for the Toronto Blue Jays. They don't have the greatest farm system, so it's not really helping them there. So there's not a surplus of talent, to give up to actually bring in anyone. But they can move some stuff around and maybe bring in a bat and a bullpen arm. And I think with where they're at in the AL East, they believe that they can compete. They traded this past offseason as if they wanted to compete as well too. And so I think that kind of is a bit show of their hand on what they want to do once we get to the trade deadline. What about the I just said that, Tampa Bay Rays?
Yeah, these guys should definitely be sellers at the deadline. And it's not all their fault, right? It's similar to the A's. But the reality is, if this isn't going to be your core, you got to move the older pieces now, like Yandy Diaz, maybe even Brandon Lowe. And they're definitely going to swap out some relievers for some slightly younger relievers because that's just how they roll. So slight sell.
Yeah, I said typical retool for the Tampa Bay Rays. It's rare for the Rays to completely buy or completely sell regardless of how good they are. And with them hovering around 500 right now, I think it just gives them even more reason to add and subtract in the ways that they usually do once we get to the trade deadline. I do think we might see more of a sell on the top tier players. Like you said, Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lau, a couple of guys that could be on the move with some free agencies impending in the near future for both those guys. but the Rays are always going to be good at producing talent. Are always going to have a bunch of arms that be like, oh, that guy's an anomaly. So typical retool for the Rays. What about the Red Sox?
Well, the possibilities are endless thanks to their massive farm system. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to lean towards the buyer side, specifically the pitching staff, rather than sell off a Jaron Duran, despite all the rumors. And we'll get more into that once we get down to the bottom half of our trade talk. But I really don't think Boston's going to sell. I think they're okay with trying different pieces in different places. You know, we've seen Christian Campbell try out at first base, and they're just going to keep doing that.
I think the Red Sox should sell. I really do like the idea of trading Jaron Duran because of the situation that they're in. It's pretty unique where you could trade a player as good as Jaron Duran and really not have it hurt your squad because of how good Roman Anthony is expected to be and Ceddanne Rafaela being locked up to play center field and play some of the best center field that we've seen in the major leagues this year. If they do trade Jaron Duran, the return seems pretty obvious to go get a top-tier pitching prospect if you can. It is kind of tough to do that, though, because some of the teams with the top-tier pitching prospects aren't really in the Jaron Duran buy mode right now. But I think they should sell. In a perfect world, I do think they sell. What about Baltimore? Slow start, maybe starting to heat up a little bit. How do they play it?
Yeah, I think Boston shot themselves in the foot here. They basically have to sell at least a little bit here. I wouldn't be shocked if some guys like Ryan O'Hearn, Cedric Mullins, and of course Sir Anthony Dominguez, another reliever, are all gone after the deadline. Things are going to look different here. You know, it's a pretty good farm system, to be fair to them. So I am predicting they move on to the next group of supporting cast and try to fill it around the guys that are going to stick around, like Gunnar and Jackson Holiday.
I say either completely sell or do nothing. Nothing is kind of not actually nothing, though. It just kind of means, trade the relievers, the small pieces, stuff like that. But I think it really depends on how the front office feels about their ability to add pitching from outside sources this next offseason. We saw them just completely fail at doing this past year. I think they realized, hey, we can't, be slouches again and just not do anything. The offensive core is there, which I think is a great thing that you have. It's a weird scenario, and I'm just throwing this out there. I think it could work if they thought about trading Adley Rutschman. And I know that's not something that they, if you're an Oriole fan, you don't want that. He's, been one of your guys in the past couple of years. But you got a top-tier catcher waiting in the wings as far as prospects go in Samuel Basayo. And if you really trust him to take the reins back there, Adley Rutschman is your biggest trade chip outside of Gunnar Henderson. Like, you're going to be able to get a lot back for him. You would get the arms that you need, probably two, because Adley isn't just a prospect at this point. He's a big league player that has some proven results done on the field. So I think that's something they could entertain. Will they do it? Probably not. But it's something that I would be thinking about if I was those. What about the Rangers?
Yeah, Texas is one of the few teams on this list with the legit championship window still technically open, as long as Corey Seager and the great rotation is there. So I expect them to buy a little bit and try to fix that lineup. Nothing too crazy.
I definitely think they should buy. Like you said, the championship window thing, I have on my notes, Seager, Semien, Adolis, DeGrom, Eovaldi, Molly are not getting any younger, neither as anybody on the planet, but you can't sell with this team if you want to compete in the future is what I'm trying to get at. Like, you have to buy. It's not too far away either as well, too. I think some of the bats we've seen in slumps is just very uncharacteristic for them as well, too. They have a solid surplus of prospects that they can move on from if they want to go get a top-tier talent as well, too. I think Duran also here is an interesting place, interesting target that could work. So I say they should buy. I think they will buy. And it feels like one of the smarter plays to buy out of all these teams.
Yeah.
What about the Angels? They kind of got in here because of a hot win streak a couple of weeks ago. Now sitting back 5 games under 500. But what do you think the Halos should do?
I think they should sell a little bit. It sucks for Trout, but once again, they just aren't winning that many games. They have a weak farm system than most of the teams on here and a bunch of expiring contracts. So Renjifo, Yohan Moncada, Tyler Anderson, they are going to be hot names for teams that miss out on the bigger opportunities. So, you should probably get the deal done if there are teams calling for them.
Yeah, I don't know if it's what they should do or what they will do, but it is probably what they should do. I think the Angels should sell. I don't think this is like a fire sale. You're not trading, Hoppy or anything like that because
No.
you got a good young core. You got Shane Noel, you got Neto, you got Hoppy, who I just mentioned, and Trout. Even though he's not young anymore, still feels young to us. And you got some pieces that you can move on very easily. And get some solid stuff back. Renifo, like you said, I think Soler, Moncada, Tyler Anderson, another one like you mentioned. You can move on from Kenley if you want to. Some relievers as well too outside of Kenley. If you flip a couple of those guys and go into 2026, adding a couple prospects, and they're not afraid to spend some money aside of Shohei maybe, but I'd feel pretty confident about the Angels being a team that. I mean, I wouldn't like them personally, but liking from an objectively point view, this team could actually do something, perhaps.
Especially if a team like the Phillies call about their pitching staff, right? You can't tell them no. They're going to give you a lot.
Next up, an uncomfortable conversation with the A's.
Sell the team. That's been the slogan for a few years now. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. The harsh reality is that sometimes there are guys you think are penciled in at a certain spot for years to come. But this team has been so bad down the stretch that I think it's going to be time to start getting rid of guys who have any shred of potential again because they're not going to be there in Vegas. And it's not the longest list, but some guys on that list include J.P. Sears, Miggy Andahar, Luis Urias. I was thinking of the Dodgers pitcher. My bad. And maybe even Max Muncy we talked about too. Nobody from the core, of course, but guys that aren't going to be there in Vegas. Try to get something while you can, right?
Yeah, it feels like a sell now that you're 15 games under 500. Something I have on here is maybe thinking about a Miller trade, depending on how confident you are with the pitching staff for the future. Obviously, if you trade Miller, you are opening up just the house of horrors for the back end of the bullpen for the foreseeable future and finding a replacement for that. One guy I expected for sure be gone is Luis Urias due to his good year and maybe not a long-term spot for him on the roster. But outside of those guys, there isn't really much for the A's to do, I feel like. On to our National League teams. Cool little fun story right now with the Nationals. They're creeping back into 500 territory with a potential superstar in James Wood on their roster. How do you think the Nats should go about the trade deadline?
They remind me a bit of the Angels situation where I am not quite sure what they're going to do because they've been spending a little bit of money recently, but they should probably sell too when it comes down to it. They're starting to build that core and they haven't played horrible, but there's no need to keep guys like Kyle Finnegan and Ahmed Rosario when the playoffs aren't really a realistic option for a few years, if ever.
I expect them to move a vet or two. I really like this Nationals core. They got pitching and Mackenzie Gore, Mitchell Parker I like as well too, and some other guys as well. Hitting, James Wood's a stud. C.J. Abrams is a stud. Dylan Cruz looks like he could be a guy eventually. But Nathaniel Lau, probably going to go. Finnegan, like you said, probably going to go. And I don't think those are bad moves for the Nationals. They can add here in the offseason as well too and really get back to a point where they can compete for a playoff spot in the NL East. Moving on to the Atlanta Braves.
Atlanta should shake some things around here. I think the smart play would be to trade the 30-plus-year-old guys like Marcell Ozuna, Raisel Iglesias, but I just don't see them doing it. So I predict that they're going to be buyers this year. They're going to grab some bullpen help, nothing major. They like their lineup. Those guys are getting paid for a lot of years.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to do but buy for the Atlanta Braves. They're in a weird spot where the team is majority locked down, but the one guy that isn't locked down for a super long time is the best player on their team in Ronald Acuna Jr. His contract technically is up in 2026. He has 2 club options after that, so we'll probably see him unless something crazy happens through 2028 with the Braves under this contract. But once we get to 2028, this is a guy that
we'll go
300 mil. Like he's got a lot of money coming to him, and the Atlanta Braves are probably going to want to try to win 1 or 2 more World Series during that time period. So I think you got to buy. I know the season's been so weird for them right now. The offense is just ever since 2023 has not been the same. The pitching staff has dealt with a ton of injuries this year, whether that be Strider, Reynaldo Lopez. We just saw AJ Smith-Shawver go down and need Tommy John surgery now, which sucks. I believe he needed Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
That
was my breakout pick, man.
Yeah, but I don't think you have anything to do but buy as long as Ronald Acuna is in this little contract. I would say uncertainty, but I don't know, just waiting until you get something really long-term with him. On to the Central. Let's start off with the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, the Reds are sellers. Cincinnati's been disappointing, and apparently Austin Hayes and Nick Martinez are going to have massive markets in July. So why not reload on some prospects? This is clearly not working right now with what's going on. They desperately need some more power hitting, and I guess you could say another team battling injuries. They haven't really had the same lineup for about 2 seasons now, but still, I'm selling if I'm Cincy.
My note here says I honestly don't know. The Cincinnati Reds, when we looked at them, a couple of Julys ago, we're like, oh, wow, the Reds really have, this core that's going to come up and they can compete for NL Central titles and, get into the playoffs. And I think we predicted them into the playoffs at some point over the past couple of years. And that was supposed to be Noelvi Marte, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Matt McLain, all these different guys. And for one reason or another, it just hasn't quite worked out for any of them. Obviously, Ellie's come up and you could call him a superstar, you can call him not a superstar. I don't care. He's, big brand type guy. But outside of him, it just really hasn't worked out for that young core that we thought was just going to go crazy. Pitching staff has been solid, better than what I expected it to be, especially in that Cincinnati Reds Great American Ballpark. Austin Hayes, some other guys, well, too. Nick Martinez, like you said, probably on the move. They already traded Alexis Diaz, who, isn't really much now at this point, but I don't know, because things can click and things can get going. I did not expect Matt McLain to have an OPS in the 500s after what he did 2 seasons ago and looking like he was fully healthy in spring training. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me holding out some hope for the roster, but I could also see him, tearing some things up as well, too. On to Arizona, the last team we got.
I've heard a lot of mixed reviews online from the so-called experts, but I don't care because if I'm Arizona, I am absolutely buying. They've come way too far to give up now. And I think you can chalk them up for at least 2 more rental pitchers this summer because they have postseason aspirations. Despite having one of the worst ERAs in baseball, they were just in the World Series. You cannot give up now. You have to buy. Don't trade Josh Naylor.
I also you have to buy, right? Like, you just need some short-term pitching solutions, and this is a World Series contender. And I feel so confident saying that they are a World Series contender because they've been there. They've done it. They literally did it 2 years ago with a pitching staff that felt shitty at times during the season and had a very weird stretch just like they're going through right now where they couldn't get outs. But it all clicked for 1 month. That's really all you need as long as you get into the playoffs. Right now, are they in that spot? Fuck no. They need to do some work to get there. But if they're in there, they're a sleeper team that can win it all in October. 3 fun questions to end out our little buyer or seller talk is the big names. Everybody wants to know who's the best player getting traded, who's the best pitcher getting traded. So we're answering that question. Who do you think is the best pitcher we see traded?
Well, this question depends on how you feel personally about Sandy Alcantara because he should be moved for a fresh start. but that ADRA is going to force me to pick a backup plan with a slightly better WAR. So I'm going to go with Dylan Cease of the Padres. I don't see them extending him during a down year, and the Padres are a team that like to wheel and deal, not wait around for anyone else's decision. So I wouldn't be shocked if him or Michael King get moved.
I have something completely out of left field, but as I talk through it and as we get to the end of it, I think you'll see, it makes sense.
Okay.
So first we'll start off talking about the Kansas City Royals and their great starting rotation that they have, whether that be Reagan, who's hurt right now, but Lugo, Michael Wacha has been good. Lorenzen's been solid. And of course, Chris Bubich. We look at Baltimore. Long term, they need some pitching, but what do they have? They got a whole bunch of hitting. So my biggest name that we see traded is Chris Bubich. It'd be a complete shocker. But my mock trade I have right now is that Chris Bubich goes to Baltimore for Kobe Mayo and Colton Cowser. It would make sense for both teams because they got the ability to move those two spots. Both those, Kansas City's hitting sucks. Baltimore's pitching sucks. And I think it makes sense for both sides. It's also a thing for Kansas City too, where if you told them going into this year, hey, you can get AL rookie. Cowser won AL rookie of the year last year, I believe. You can get him and Kobe Mayo for a guy that was originally not supposed to be your ace, not supposed to be your 2-starter, not supposed to be your 3-starter. I think you could look at that and be pretty okay. It makes some solid sense for them. Would it be tough giving up a guy who has a 1.7 ERA? Yeah, but you can capitalize. And selling high is how you become a team like the Rays, and they got a manager that came from that pedigree. So, will it happen? Probably not. Definitely not. But I think it's a trade that definitely makes sense for both sides. On to the best hitter we see traded.
I have a similar strategy with my best position player traded, slightly different from yours. I'll backtrack to my scenario here. Technically, I said Bo Bichette. I don't think will be moved. Jarren Duran, I wouldn't do it, so I didn't pick it. So technically, next up in WAR is Cedric Mullins. That would be the guy I would trade in the move for a pitcher. I think he's a great player, but Baltimore is a disaster. I couldn't pull the trigger on the other guys, like I mentioned, but I think this could bring them back a pretty good pitcher, maybe team-friendly deal too, even though it's just a really weird situation in Baltimore. I think Cedric Mullins is a guy that they wouldn't be too upset to let go.
Best hitter we see traded for me. I have Jarren Duran as mine. The location is interesting. I have him going to Philly. And I said that the top prospect that you need back for him would be pretty crucial. My return as of right now, which I don't really love, is Mick Abel and Aiden Miller. I just don't know how much Philly wants to trade Andrew Painter. It could happen for Jarren Duran. I think it's possible with the control that he has. But it seems like they are pretty confident in Painter's ability to be a frontline guy. I don't think you trade a frontline guy for Duran, but I think Duran to Philly makes sense as far as logistically wise in center field. Maybe get Johan Rojas' bat out of the lineup, and in goes Jarren Duran in center field and plays solid defense. Aiden Miller, Mick Abel don't really have too much of a spot in Philly if you really like Painter and you maybe trust Alec Baum to play third for you. So I think that's a possible spot. San Diego as well too. There's a bunch of different spots for Jarren Duran. I said Texas earlier as well. Last question. Surprise name you think has a chance to be traded? Big thing is the chance. Obviously, chance could be 1%, chance could be 50%. What do you think, Skyler?
Yeah, well, my first guy I want to talk about's odds are constantly changing because he plays for Milwaukee. That's Freddie Peralta, one of the guys I've had my eyes on. The Brewers' resurgence has me a little more hesitant, but this could definitely be a guy that's in one of those moves we've talked about today. A couple teams really need a pitcher: Baltimore, the Yankees, and Arizona. But I'll be a little more cautious on this one right now and say for a bat, I'll pick another one. How about Nolan Arenado? Sometimes you see teams turn a surprising hot first start into a sell high opportunity. We've been waiting for the Cardinals to do anything for a couple of years now, and I kind of want to see Arenado in a new system and playing in October. He deserves that.
Surprise name to be traded. It would be Chris Bubich, right? Like that. Yeah. That's the boring choice for me. If I said that, they literally made a mock trade for him. I think the other guy, I mentioned him earlier, Mason Miller as well too. There's going to be a lot of teams calling for him. Like that makes sense that teams are going to be interested in trying to get him. And will the A's entertain it? Who knows? Probably, actually, because they like to do those type of things. There might be an offer that they just refuse, that they can't deny. And would it suck as an A's fan? Of course. But we've been disappointed before, like we are right now. But moving on, NBA Finals preview. This is a fun one. Skylar, tell me about the crazy NBA Finals we got coming up.
We got a very interesting matchup in the NBA Finals this season. OKC and Indiana, a lot of love for the Midwest in a championship matchup between two towns or cities, however you want to look at it, we've never seen in pro sports. So I'm really excited for that. Also, because of the amount of depth both teams have. Rick Carlisle of Indiana loves to show off his 14-man rotation like he's pulling out his Johnson. So that should be really entertaining. The problem with that is that OKC is just as deep as them, with some of the fastest guards in the league, some of the best defenders, and some of the toughest big men in all of basketball. Not to mention the Thunder are 12-4 in these playoffs and a whopping 29 wins to 1 loss versus the East. So I got OKC in 5 games. Of course, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would be the MVP in this situation because he's averaging over 30 points per game. I would love a more competitive series. And I am a believer of what Indiana has going on. But OKC seems pretty unstoppable. And I thought it would kind of happen a little bit before the finals. But at some point, I figured Indiana would be exposed for only having one true scorer on their team. They're going to have to do something else after they get embarrassed by OKC in 5 games. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, pretty interesting series. Definitely biggest thing that sticks out to me is the market. We look at, what it was for baseball this past year in the World Series, New York versus LA. Here it's OKC versus Indiana. That's not something that, we would see in most cases. We haven't obviously seen that in baseball because there is no 2 teams in those locations. I was trying to think back to a time when both teams in the NBA Finals didn't have a baseball team in that city. Yeah. And I couldn't really think back to a time that had happened. Maybe I need to do some more research, but just off the top of my head, I couldn't think of it. But going into the actual series, it is between these 2 teams. When we did our picks previous times, Indiana versus Cleveland, I had Cleveland winning that series. Indiana versus the Knicks, I had the Knicks winning that series. And I also had the Timberwolves beating the Thunder. So maybe I'm just not good at picking basketball. That could be something. But the Pacers have really surprised me. And I don't think I can pick them right now just because of how big the mismatchup is. I'll go OKC in 6 because I do think that they make it interesting just to, but whether it's them or the NBA trying to push some longer series to get TV ratings up, whatever it may be. But I got OKC in 6. I'll go Shai for the MVP as well too. But if Indiana does it, I'll actually probably be rooting for them to win it. So, go Pacers, I guess. I don't
know. Even if we do get that shorter series, we're going to see some great X's and O's in this series. Some great basketball.
Now moving into our layups bold predictions. Last week it was weird because we got our layups wrong, but our bold predictions right. So if you bet on those, you would have came out plus money. Last week, layup, I had the Cubs and White Sox, Cubs and Rockies going over 7.5 on Wednesday. We talked about this yesterday. This was a 2-1 ball game, I'm pretty sure. So kind of a weird thing there. Skylar had OKC and the Knicks in the finals. That did not happen. This week, I am going back to the Cubs over method. This is versus the Nationals tomorrow. The over-under line has not been set yet, either at 7.5 or 8.5. This is a really good pitching matchup between Matt Boyd and Mackenzie Gore, but both these lineups are hot right now. They are both lineups that don't strike out a ton versus guys that strike out a ton in Matt Boyd and Mackenzie Gore. So I think some of those at-bats that were strikeouts can lead to walks lead to hits lead to runs. And so I will take the over in that one.
Okay. Also got the Chicago Cubs involved with mine, but I'm going to take the red-hot Detroit Tigers to beat them on Friday night. Should be an awesome series. Two of the best teams in baseball, but we got Tarek Skubal on the mound Friday night.
That's a fun matchup. Definitely going to be something I'll be watching for sure. Is that in Detroit or Chicago?
I should have written that down, but I didn't put at Chicago, so I'm thinking it is in Detroit. I'll double check it though.
Let me see. So that'll be an early game if it is in Detroit. Yeah, Detroit.
Apple TV.
Ooh, that sucks. Audible predictions though. I had Miami over the Padres on Wednesday. That did happen. It was a crazy game. Comebacks, and I believe Agustin Ramirez had 4 hits in this one and got it green for me. Skylar had Atlanta over Philly on Thursday, but there were 2 games on Thursday. Good thing you wrote down the pitchers and we know which game it was. He goes green there. So we got 2 for 2 on bold predictions. This week, I have Arizona over Atlanta on Wednesday. That is tomorrow, and it is Kelly versus Sale.
Okay.
If Arizona can shut down a team, I trust Arizona's lineup to beat Chris Sale. And I think they have the best chance to shut down a team when they got Merrill Kelly on the bump.
Again, with my pick, we're somehow connected here because after Atlanta plays Arizona, they're going to San Francisco, and I got Atlanta winning that 3-game series. Schwellenbach in game 1. I like that matchup a lot. Game 2, Elder versus Logan Webb. Let's be safe and just give them the series win on that one. And then Spencer Strider, game 3, gets the job done.
That's going to do it, though, for episode 247 of the Going the Distance podcast. Next week, 248. We'll figure that out then. Yeah. I won't even say go A's. I feel like I can't at this point. But any parting notes?
Finals game 1 on Thursday. And, hey, maybe just turn off that A's game an inning before you normally would and watch some college baseball. That's what I've been doing, and it makes me a lot less angry at night.
I just can't turn it off. That's my problem. I'm like fiend. I need it. But
I get it for sure. In a month from now, that'll be me when we're like 30 games under 500.
Yeah. I did not think we'd be here a month ago. But anyways, we'll see you guys next week for episode 248, approaching 250.
Oh, baby.